Aaron Ahuvia, PhD, is a professor of marketing and research psychologist who's been ranked 22 in the world for research impact in consumer behaviour and ranked in the top 2% of all scientists in the world across all disciplines by an independent study from Stanford University. And Aaron is on the line with us here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
So you've got this book out called The Things We Love. How would you describe it?
Well, it's about the psychology of love, but it's a little different. There's about 1,000 books on the psychology of love, probably 10,000 books. But this is the only one that talks about what's going on when we love activities or objects or nature or brands or products or just all kinds of stuff other than people that we love. And I throw pets in there too.
I guess that's something that's never been covered before, is it? I never really thought about the love for activities. But is that love? I guess it's a different love to a partner or a family member or a friend, right?
Yeah, well, there's lots of different kinds of love, right? And love for, the romantic love we feel is different from the love we feel for our family members, our children, or whoever. And that's different from a friend. And all of that is different from the love we feel for objects or activities. But they have certain things in common, which, and they share certain core common psychological processes in the brain, which is why they're all love.
So what gave you the idea to write this book? And I guess when did you discover that activities, we have love for them in this way?
I've been doing this research for many years. It started when I was actually a PhD student, which was 30 years ago. Some real old timers, there's a famous marketing professor named Philip Kotler, and I was taking a class with him. And this was in the PhD program at Northwestern at Kellogg. And he was of the view that, everything was marketing. Even dating was marketing because you're sort of marketing yourself to the other person. And I was single at the time, and I thought dating was way more interesting than real marketing. So I asked him if I could write my term paper on that. And not only did he say yes, but he connected me with a professor, Mara Edelman, who had data on a dating service, which was one of the just getting going. This was before the internet. And we ended up doing research on dating services sort of just before the creation of the internet into the early internet. And so we saw that whole transition. And now, at the time we started doing this, very, very few people connected this way. And now it's the single most common way that people do connect through some sort of online or other intermediary.
Yeah.
But in any event, I wrote a whole bunch of papers with her. I ended up actually on the Oprah Winfrey Show. It was very fun. And I studied the psychology of romantic love in order to do that work. Then when I needed a dissertation topic, I realized that, it just wasn't going to cut it at a mainstream business school to be the dating service professor. I needed something, a little bit more, mainstream in marketing. And then it occurred to me, well, people love products and brands. And I had done all this reading for years on the psychology of love, and I didn't want to let that go to waste. So I started sort of applying that to people's love of products and brands. It turns out that, not surprisingly, lots and lots of people had studied similar kinds of things, had looked at people, why people are interested in products and brands and their strong feelings about them, etc. But nobody had really said, well, what does the psychology of love specifically have to say about the way we relate to these kinds of objects? So I was the first person to really do in-depth empirical work on this topic. And I've been doing that work for about 30 years. And I really wanted to share it with the general public because I think it is fascinating.
Yeah. How much has the dating systems changed over the years? Because I can't imagine a dating system without the internet.
When I first started doing this research in dating systems, the two biggest, the normal way people met each other was just informally. But if you wanted to have some sort of a dating service, the two big forms, one was in newspapers and magazines, and people would place singles ads, which were little print ads of about 100 words describing themselves. And then there would be a phone number, not your personal phone number, but a phone number controlled by the newspaper. And other people who were interested would phone this phone number. And the way the newspaper would make money is that they would get, a certain amount of money per minute that the person spent on the phone listening to people describe themselves and then leaving phone messages for people that they were interested in meeting. And this was hugely profitable. Certain magazines or newspapers were making $1 million a month just from people phoning in. So this was becoming very profitable. And then, of course, the internet comes along and does this whole thing much better. And in fact, a lot of those magazines ended up going out of business in part due to the internet coming and taking over that revenue source.
On your website for the book, it's got an Is It Really Love quiz. Now, I did it, and it's interesting because I chose an object, and all my answers were mostly positive, and yet it comes out saying that it is not love.
There's two different ways of thinking about love and sort of how much we feel love or what is real love. So one way is sort of analogous to saying it's only a hot day if it's, say, over 80 degrees Fahrenheit. But there's another way of thinking about things, and that would be to say that, it's only love if it's this really strong, intense kind of relationship. There's an analogy, though, which says, hey, maybe we use the word, we say it's a hot day when it's over 80 degrees Fahrenheit, but there's still heat in the air, no matter what the temperature is, and you can measure more of it or less of it, right? So similarly, you can have a relationship that involves a certain amount of love at sort of lower levels, even if it isn't intense enough for people to use the common phrase that says, well, you're really in love with this thing.
So what would you say is the actual content of the book? How do you explore love?
Well, it starts with this really odd sort of contradiction. So the contradiction is that on the one hand, people can only really love other people. Your brain is evolved to sort out people from everything else. And it does this automatically, unconsciously. And then it thinks about people in different ways from the ways it thinks about other things. And sometimes it even goes so far as to have different regions of the brain. So if you watch a person sweeping the floor, your brain will think about that visual image in one part of the brain. Whereas if you watch a Roomba, this little robot sweeping the floor, it'll think about that in a different part of the brain. So it's quite distinct in that way. And love is one of these things that's really the brain limits to people. On the other hand, there's all kinds of things that people love that aren't people. And so, well, why isn't that a bizarre contradiction, or, more than it is? And the answer is whenever you really love an object, it's a case of mistaken identity at some level. Your brain is thinking about that thing as if it was a person. It doesn't mean consciously you believe it's a person, but it means your brain is doing this very unusual thing and treating that thing as if it was a person. And you can see that, for example, we love our pets, but we think about them very much as if they were people. And there's a number of different ways that the brain sort of gets tricked, if you will, into thinking about activities or objects or other things using the thought processes that it normally reserves for people.
Yeah. And what kind of activities and things do people tend to love? I mean, is there stuff that absolutely nobody loves?
I'm sure there's some things that nobody loves, but it's kind of amazing to me what a wide variety of things there are. And for the most part, even things that you would think are not that lovable, I found somebody out there, who loves that thing. So if you think about like steel, just the metal itself, not anything made out of it, does not seem like a terribly lovable thing to me. But I once interviewed a guy who loved steel. He was an engineer and a metallurgist, and he was very big on all of the cool things you could do with steel and how underappreciated it was as a metal. And he just loved it. So, there's just as it's sometimes said that for every person, there's another person out there who's sort of their mate who will love them. So too, I often think that for just about everything in the world, there's somebody out there who's going to love that thing. That said, there are some things that are loved a lot more than other things that are much more common.
Now, what else is coming up for you? Have you got more books that you're working on?
At the moment, what I'm really interested in is how companies that have some sort of a social agenda or a social mission. So these could be large companies, sometimes they're smaller companies, but they really want to, obviously they want to make a profit, but that's not their only goal. They have some other goal, maybe, helping the environment, reducing global warming, reducing poverty. There's all kinds of different goals that they might have, or just, making the world a more fun or more beautiful place. How companies that have those different goals can use brand love as a marketing strategy, because when customers love a brand, it is really powerful for the company. But one of the things that is true about the things people love is that, love is deep. Love is a profound experience. And people tend to love objects and experiences that they feel connect with them on a deeper level, right? If there's some food and it just tastes delicious, you might say, oh, I love this. It tastes great. But if I said, well, do you really love it? You'd say, well, no, it's delicious, but I don't really love it. On the other hand, if there's a food that tastes great and your mother used to make it for you as a child, and it's, you associate it with your family, and it has all of these sort of emotional connections for you that go way beyond, that are much deeper and more personal for you than just the way it tastes, then you might say, yeah, I really love that food. And when you translate that into marketing, it's often companies that are doing something a little bit more socially progressive or, public interested in some way that can generate that feeling that their products are deeply meaningful to people. And so I'm interested in working with companies like this to discover, what they're doing, and also to help them do a better job of that. And I will, make an offer. I know you're in Australia, I'm in America. So I do a lot of consulting, including a lot of, large corporations. And I usually charge, I'm a keynote speaker. One of the ways I pay the rent is by giving talks at companies. But if there's a company and it has some sort of a social mission and you're interested in learning about brand love, if you will pay the out-of-pocket costs, I would even come and waive my normal fees and give a talk and share with you what I know, because I really am interested in encouraging that kind of work. And I'm at a point in my career where that's a project that excites me, and I'd like to work on that.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, where are we able to find this current book, The Things We Love?
Oh, it's on Amazon is the easiest place. Any online bookseller.
Thank you very much for coming on today. It's been great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a great day.